It's 12:02, folks, so we're going to get this started. So this is my first time doing this, so I apologize for any technical mistakes I'm going to make. For anyone who doesn't know me or who can't read underneath my picture here, I'm Tricia Lenahan from Staples, and I am also on the board of directors for our Cornet New England chapter. And I want to welcome everyone today for what we hope will be the first of many virtual tours. And we're very, very excited to be showing a new lab space, lab incubator space, ABI-LABs in Natick, Mass. And I think it's going to be very interesting. It's very timely. And we're very, very excited about having this opportunity to show this to everybody. So can you, Mary Elizabeth, the next slide? So I just wanted to call out a couple more upcoming webinars. These won't be tours, these are programs, but they both also look very, very interesting to me and also very timely. A proposed grassroots effort to support return to school and office, which looks very interesting. And also another webinar about the great debate of 2020. So these are both in the next week. Friday, July 24th, and next Wednesday, July 29th in the afternoon. So please look at your newsletter or on our website, and you'll find a link to register for either or both of those. We also want to encourage everyone to join our social media conversation. We have a very active Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram feeds. Very much sponsored and pushed by our social media liaison, Stephen Smith, excuse me, from North Star. And I think he is registered for the program today, so I just wanted to say hi. Thank you for all the great content that you provide, but everybody can do this. So look for us, share news, share whatever you'd like on these platforms. So next. And we want to say thank you to all of our corporate partners. We can't do any of this without your help. So this is a list of our corporate partners right now. Thank you all. And we also want to say thank you to our sponsors, our platinum sponsors and our gold and silver sponsors. So these are all of our gold sponsors and also our silver sponsors. So thank you very, very much. Cornet wouldn't be what we are without the sponsorship. The last item of business that I wanted to run through is how to ask a question. And this is very, very important. We are going to have a great program and there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end, as there always are. So in this format, we want you to submit questions via the Q&A window that you can see here. So it's at the bottom of the Zoom dashboard. So there's a way to chat with people and there's a way to do questions. Don't put your questions in the chat box, put them in the Q&A window. That's where it will come. So, and we'll look forward to a great next 50 minutes or so as we learn more about what's going on at ABI-LABs. So with that, I want to turn this over to Joy Shapiro, who is the co-chair of the Programs Committee. And she is going to take us through the program. So Joy, all yours.
Great. Thank you, Tricia, and welcome everybody to ABI-LAB's virtual tour and program, the evolving incubator model behind the success of the biotech industry. Before I introduce our speaker today, we would like to share this video with you of the building and the amazing science and stories taking place within.
So we like to say that you can move in today and start your science tomorrow, because it's not just about space. It's about helping people with problems and solving different experiments. So we really do it all.
Getting diagnosed with cancer, when something like that hits you, what you want is to survive. But I started to take the track of knowing my enemy, and so learned that I was far from alone, that rare cancer is not rare at all. There are at least 400 distinct types of cancer indications. 380 of those qualify as rare, and the vast majority have no treatment protocols. And I think that kind of made me mad. And I decided to build Shepherd Therapeutics.
Vertec Bio was founded to develop this hemoglobin polymer that can be given anytime there's blood loss There's no type crossing, it's room temperature stable, you can use it immediately. The DoD became very interested in this and always has been. The idea that you could carry a solution onto the battlefield and give that to a wounded soldier who's bleeding to death. Bleeding to death is the most preventable form of death there is, right? And so this serves as a bridge to life. We chose the ABI-LABs because it was set up for research, it was set up for science. We were literally doing experiments the day after our first box moved into the lab.
We considered this current space to be better than anything offered in the Boston ecosystem, and at a percentage of the cost. It was a place to find our feet, first of all, and then it scaled right as we scaled.
Dacon has been doing life science work for years. On design build, you're that much closer to the actual design of the job, and you've got much more influence over how the things get built. That design process is throughout the entire construction process. It's a much more efficient, collaborative environment to work in. We're invested and we own every step of the way until the day we hand them the keys. So we're pretty unique. We had an excellent product here at the end that everybody who's a part of it can be proud of.
I think the design build concept makes a lot of sense. And we did in fact commit under budget. But there's going to be a lot of drugs, a lot of medical treatments coming out of these two buildings. It's not just about, ones and zeros in your checkbook. It's about helping people. It's about making a difference.
Thank you. Apologize for that technical difficulty in the beginning, Mary Elizabeth. Thank you for fixing that. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker, Gary Kaufman. Gary serves as the Chief Operating Officer at ABI-LAB. Along with his partners at ABI-LAB, Gary is an angel investor in a multitude of biotech ventures. He is currently in the process of creating an investment vehicle to fund an additional 2 to 4 companies a year. And with that, take it away, Gary.
Thank you very much for having me today. And thank you for the introduction. I want to talk to you about what I think is a really increasing opportunity for life science incubators, accelerators, and life science building in general in the suburbs here. Next. So this slide really screams what's going on. Massachusetts gets $2.8 billion. We get over 10%, our state, of all the NIH funding that goes out nationwide every single year. California, by comparison, is so much larger than Massachusetts. It's probably 10 times larger than Massachusetts, but they're really not getting that much more than Massachusetts is. Of course, this all started about 10 years ago when Deval Patrick created the Life Science Initiative, and he sort of pre-funded or preceded, if you will, the life science industry. And that's why Massachusetts is the leader in the entire world. This is the epicenter of all life science research, and we really need to take advantage of that. The recent Governor Baker re-signed or recommitted another 10 years. And so there's definitely government commitment to continuing to increase this field or this field of study in Massachusetts for many, many decades to come. Next slide. So this talks about the growth and 35% growth on employees the last 10 years. very, very fast growth. And simply put, we've all seen this the last 3 or 4 months. You can't do life science lab research in your basement or in your 3rd bedroom. It has to be done in a lab facility. In fact, Governor Baker, when he did the shutdown, all biotech labs were exempt from the shutdown because of the life science, the life-saving research that's being done on a daily basis here in Massachusetts, all over Massachusetts, not just Cambridge, but also in many of the suburbs and Worcester, even out in Springfield. Next slide. So of course, you've got growth with employees, you need growth with space. You have to put these researches someplace. And so this slide really talks about the amount of square feet that has grown in the last 10 years. It should be noted that Cambridge and the Seaport, which of course is the epicenter of Massachusetts right now for life science, has less than 1%, I'll repeat that, less than 1% vacancy rate. It does not have the same office component during COVID, where you've got a lot of people who are in offices who are leaving the offices. In fact, the lab area has become even more emphasized and even more demand on lab area. Next slide. So this is the leadership team at ABI-LAB. Of course, Joy introduced myself. Dr. Neer is the Chief Science Officer. He works on a daily basis with our family of companies that are here and helping them with grant writing, helping answer questions, just impromptu brainstorming about different scientific challenges and discoveries. David Pratt is also a principal here, and he assists me with sort of the day-to-day running functions. Next slide. So these are our 2 buildings. And I'll give you a little bit of history of where we came from so that you can sort of understand and put it all in perspective. So Dr. Neer has another company called SPH Sciences, and that is a CRO, contract research organization, which essentially larger life science companies reach out to him and say, it's really not economical for me to do this particular type of research. I'm going to sub it out to you. He does that research for a lower cost and then sends it back to the large company. At the same time, he started incubating a company called Karyopharm Therapeutics back in 2008. Karyopharm was working on different cancer research, and he was the co-founder of that company. Unfortunately, Karyopharm is now located in Newton, in the Wells Park area. They grew quite a bit from 2008 to 2014. They went public. They're traded on NASDAQ right now. And they have one drug that has been approved for different applications, one being multiple myeloma treatment and another being lymph node cancer treatment. And they're helping thousands of people already. They're changing their life. And that's what this business is all about, changing people's lives. And so when Dr. Neer co-founded that company, and about 5 years in, he realized that there was a real demand for incubator space. And many, many companies can't afford to be in Cambridge. The burn rate in Cambridge is crazy of the amount of money that you have, that you need. So in 2015, we bought a former BJ's building. That's the smaller building in the middle, and we created ABI-LAB 1. It's about 16,500 square feet. We were at capacity in about a year with the waiting list. And that's when we started looking for another building. But the cat was out of the bag. People in the business park knew that we were very successful, and we couldn't buy another building at the right economics. So we partnered up with David Pratt and his family, and we met with Daycon. We ended up choosing Daycon to help us build ABI-LAB 2, which is about 4 times the size of ABI-LAB 1. Next slide. So this really talks about some of the advantages of being in the suburbs. And, you know, cost is one of those big advantages. We're about half the price of Cambridge and Boston. Potential, I think potential is really taken on a new definition now with COVID. Our spaces are much larger. You don't have to cram the same number of people into our spaces as you do in Cambridge, and because of the social distancing. So there's a huge potential to maximize. We have a ton of parking. You know, that also talks about why life sciences in the suburbs makes sense, especially for the next few years. I'm not quite sure what the trend is going to be, but I think a lot of people are not going to want to take public transportation the next few years. And what does that do to the traffic on the roads? Where do those cars park if you're going into Boston? It's going to be a real big dilemma. And so that's, you know, that's regarding the potential. You can see that there are a lot of companies out in the Metro West area and out in the suburbs. You've got Fort Devens that is doing big expansions. You've got, of course, I'm sure everyone knows about Moderna and what they're doing, but they're in Norwood. They're off of Route 1A in Norwood. That's going to be, if they're successful with their vaccine, people from all around the world are going to be coming to Norwood, Massachusetts to see what they're doing. Not Cambridge, Mass, Norwood, Mass. Next slide, please. So we're not the only ones doing a bioincubator. You'll see that there's somebody up on the North Shore. There's someone down in Mansfield. We're, of course, right off the Mass Pike, about 25 minutes from Cambridge. And there's someone out in Worcester, MBI. And then, of course, there is someone in Cambridge, one of our chief competitors, Lab Central. The important thing to note about this map is that the distance from Boston to Worcester is under 50 miles. Silicon Valley, which of course you all know, and is the epicenter of high tech, Apple and Google and Netflix, is 46.89 miles. So Boston to Worcester is the same exact size as Silicon Valley. There's really no reason why, and it's already happened, we're already seeing it, that companies are pushing out to Newton, to Waltham, to Framingham, to Natick. You know, you've got some companies on 495 in Marlborough, and then of course you've got off of Route 2, you've got Fort Devens. So we believe that in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a Silicon Valley-ish type of situation with biotech as companies push out, both for, they need more manufacturing space. You certainly can't set up a manufacturing facility in downtown Boston. There's, of course, a big push to bring manufacturing back to the US. And of course, if you have your preference, you want to do your manufacturing close to where your research and development is. And so off of 128, off of 93, off of 495, and off of the Mass Pike is going to be where companies want to be. They're going to want to be near where the research is done. Next slide. So this, of course, you saw this in our video. I briefly talked about the social distancing. Let's talk about the private funding aspect a little bit here. One of the problems with some of the incubators and with some of the facilities is they are state funded or federally funded. Not that there's anything wrong with state or federally funded, but there is some catches that come along with that. Because if you're taking state money or federal money, you have to continue to create jobs. You have to essentially throw people out 12 to 18 months after they move in. If you're privately funded, you do whatever you want. So we are privately funded. honestly, it takes more than 12 to 18 months to create great science. You get the data to go to the next level. It's about 6 to 8 years before a product gets to market. Some of the medications that all of us take, that medication took 6 to 8 years to create in a lab, to go to an animal facility to do testings, then to go ahead and do the testings on humans before it actually gets approved by the FDA. It takes time, and I think that's really important. The growth opportunity, you know, where a company is going to grow, less than 1% in Cambridge, they need space to grow. We have some space to grow. About 10,000 square feet size labs is the biggest labs we have. But frankly, you need bigger spaces than that. And I think that's where a lot of the opportunity lies in the Metro West area, in the suburbs. Next slide. So we've talked briefly about the price. We're half the price of Cambridge and Boston. We do not do triple net leasing. We do a gross lease. A lot of our equipment is built in, the generators, the autoclaves, all the electricity. There's no snow plowing bill or no tax bill that anybody's going to get. It's a gross lease that we charge. Some people are going to use a little more electricity. Some people are going to use a little more autoclaves. But on the whole, we think this specific model makes sense. Next slide. So this is just sort of a summary here of what we're doing. You know, our grandparents would say, you know, leave this world better than you came into this world. We're changing the lives of patients. We're already doing that in the thousands with Karyopharm Therapeutics. I would expect that 5 to 10 more companies will come out of our incubators in the next 5 to 10 years, grow up to be the Modernas and the Pfizers and the Genzymes of the world, and create, you know, great medical therapies that all of us use and extend our lives and help us live much more comfortably. I think that we're going to start a little virtual tour now of our building so you can see some of the rooms as well. So this is one of our standard labs, if you will. So we actually have, right now we have 23 standard labs, and that's the panning around of the standard labs. They all come with generator plugs. Most of them come with 2 offices, a shower, safety shower there. We also put equipment. We put what we call foundation equipment in each lab. You'll see 3 of the pieces of the foundation equipment right there. That's a -80 freezer, a 20-degree freezer, a double stack incubator there. And then we have about 40 feet of lab bench in there as well. This is what most people need for a foundation to get started. Now, you can go up to Woburn right now, off the highway. You all know where I'm talking about. And you can pay less money for a 1,000 square foot lab, but it'll take you 3 to 6 months to open up because you don't have a generator. You don't have, in many cases, the safety shower. You don't have the foundation equipment. And you also don't have some of the other amenities that are offered in incubators, the conference rooms and things like that. Next slide. So this is our innovation lab on the 3rd floor. And this is a lab that is accessible to everyone in both of our buildings. We have Thermo Fisher supply centers there. You'll see those. We also have about $1 million of equipment in this lab. qPCRs, Attunes, Evo 7000s, lots of equipment that people don't need on a daily basis. So it's not a foundation equipment, but it's the type of equipment that people need once a week, once a month. And they don't want to make the investment of $1 million for something that they only need once a week or once a month. So this is shared equipment essentially that everyone can use. And our partnership, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, our partnership with Thermo Fisher really helped us provide this equipment to all of our tenants. Next slide. So this is one of our shells, unbuilt out shells, and we have 4 of these shells, if you will, that we can custom build for longer term leases to a company who wants, 2 to 8,000 square feet. So these are 15-foot ceilings right here. We pre-did a lot of the electrical, a lot of the plumbing, and we could have a tenant in this space in 4 to 5 months from the signing of the lease. Next slide. So this is another one of our standard labs. As you can see, foundation equipment. Again, it's about 1,000 square feet. And we actually just rented this space to a company from South Korea, opening up their US headquarters. And they didn't want to go to Cambridge, but they wanted to stay close to Cambridge, but they wanted some flexibility. Next slide. So this is one of the conference rooms. We have 7 conference rooms in this building. We have 2 conference rooms in our smaller building. All these amenities come along with that gross lease that I was telling you about. And again, do you really want to pay every month square footage for a conference room, or do you want the ability to utilize it? So whether the people watching this video decide to go in a incubator model, or you go with a built out space of 15, 20,000 on a triple net, I still think it makes sense possibly to have some shared conference rooms in the overall building. Next slide. So of course, a lot of places in Boston do this. This is a lunchroom. We provide free snacks and free coffee. It's a small expense and people love it. I think it's, again, a really important thing to do. We're of course very careful in the COVID era to make sure that every surface gets cleaned on a daily basis. And we have had 0 COVID cases in both our buildings since this whole thing started. Of course, it helps to have a lot of scientists from day one to tell you what to do, regarding keeping the building clean and safe. Next slide. So this is a pretty large, the pictures probably don't fully capture it, but this is our lounge lobby area on the first floor as you enter the building. We hosted an event back in February of 200 people in this building. We of course haven't hosted any events since then, but we hope next year to begin hosting events again, hoping that the vaccine arrives and we can get back to that. But my partner, Dr. Neer, actually jokes around that we should have weddings in this space. I don't think we'll go that far, but I think it's important to have an area like this to create those impromptu conversations between scientists of different companies and solve problems like that. Next slide. So this is another conference room. This is a much larger conference room. We call this the boardroom conference room. We, of course, set up audio, video in all the conference rooms as well, so that you can host, meetings with your divisions. If, in the case of South Korea, they use this space to host meetings with their parent company in South Korea. Next slide. This is one of our utility rooms. What you're looking at right now is our reverse osmosis DI water system. And as the screen pans around, we also have a CO2 system as well throughout the building. that we feed CO2 to everyone. And as you pan around, you'll also see that we have an LN2 fill station, if you will, as well as an ice machine that everyone utilizes as well. I think these amenities are very important to have. Of course, they are. You know, they do take some maintenance and some coverage as well as that goes. But I think it's important to have in the building, and anybody who's renting life science is going to want to see it as well. Next slide. So this is one of our 2 autoclave rooms. The pH room is right underneath that metal flooring right there. So all the lab sinks go through the pH system. We hold the license with the MWRA for everyone in the building. And then of course, everyone gets to use that autoclave as well for all their bio waste. So that autoclave, stainless steel autoclave right there, is about almost $100,000 installed. So it's, again, it's a piece of equipment that somebody who's only going to use it once a week, you know, doesn't really want to put the $100,000 out in that regard. Of course, you can get a smaller one, but still, they're very, very expensive. I think what we'd like to do is jump to some questions now.
Sure. Gary, if you'd like, I'll ask the first question that's in the Q&A.
Okay.
Okay. Can you speak to the opportunities for the small incubator firms like those located in ABI-LAB suites to support the efforts ongoing at major pharma firms to find a valid COVID vaccine?
So we're really careful about not crossing the line between running a safe building and telling people how to do their science. So I don't know 100% of what everyone is doing in the building. I do know that there are a lot of companies doing some research, probably more on a CRO basis, for some of the larger companies doing COVID research. And I know that we have ABCAM, for instance, in our building, which is a large large UK company. And I know that they're doing some research for, I believe, the British results that are testing that's going on right now. But I don't know specifically more than that.
Okay, thank you. Next question came in from Natasha. How do you size mechanical appropriately for equipment tenants to bring in ahead, knowing of the tenant? As well, how do you maintain oversight on new equipment being brought into the labs by tenants to confirm it's not overloading the room's infrastructure capacity?
So that's a good question. So when Acon built out the space, I believe we built out 5 amps per square foot for the electrical, so that we would have enough capacity in the building for electrical. Each lab in the building does have a separate thermostat. And that's really important on this building. Our other building across the street, that's not the case. We only have 8 thermostats in that building. Anybody who works in a lab can tell you that one of the most difficult things to control is the temperature. And it's always a struggle. Sometimes it's a little too cold, sometimes it's a little too warm, and this is because the amount of heat being thrown off by the equipment is very cumbersome. It's difficult. To give you a comparison, my heating bill in the wintertime for a 17,000 square foot building is about $600. I'm sure there are people watching this video right now, and at their house, their 3,000 square foot house, they have a $600 heating bill. The reason for that is because it's so much heat being thrown off by all the appliances, the refrigerators and the freezers. My AC bill, on the other hand, though, is sometimes over $10,000. So it is a challenge. It is a struggle. I would suggest that when you design it, you talk with your HVAC person and you make it to be as flexible as possible.
Thank you. The next question coming in from Bruce Schick. Is the ABI-LAB space open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days for all services and amenities?
So as far as deliveries go, we're only open Monday through Friday. But as far as scientists go, scientists can access the building 24/7, 365 days a year. 80% of the people only come in Monday through Friday, but there are people who come in at night and on the weekends because sometimes you have to feed the cells. And even on a long weekend like Thanksgiving, there's always someone who pulls a short straw and has to come in and service the cells.
Great, thank you. And this question is going to sound like it came from me, but I swear it did not. Did you use the design build to have more flexibility during construction to make changes if needed?
I think we use the design build because make sure that the builder and the architect worked together, hand in hand. There's a lot of puzzle pieces when you're building a building like this. It's much different from building a regular office building. And we knew that. I'm a licensed builder. I could have pulled a permit and built this building, but I know that I would have missed something and it would have taken me longer to do it. And so I think the design build made a lot of sense, and it kept all the puzzle pieces going together as best as could be. I'm not going to say that there weren't any little hiccups along the way, but they were very small hiccups and the issues were solved very quickly.
Great. This question comes in anonymously as well, and I am very interested in the answer to this question. What are your plans for ABI-LAB 3?
So we've been asked that many times. We've been asked to set up buildings in different parts of the country and different parts of the world, but we've turned down all of those offers so far. We have thought about doing some type of animal facility, a vivarium as the specific Latin term is, or a GMP facility, which is more of a clean room manufacturing type of facility. I'm not sure if we're going to do that though. We're going to have about 55 tenants between the two buildings when we are all full up. And I think that's going to keep us pretty busy. And I think we're going to pivot a little bit into doing more investing in companies, helping companies get more grants, and getting more companies to the promised land, if you will, of having their products approved by the FDA and out there in the market. So I think we might encourage and certainly maybe partner or have some type of associations with other facilities, but I'm not sure we'll build them ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Another question coming in anonymously. How many tenants can you accommodate in the building? And have you had to make any drastic changes for COVID to ensure there's adequate social distancing?
So we can accommodate about 55 tenants between the two buildings. Although some of the tenants are taking more labs, you know, some of the tenants are taking 3 labs or 2 labs or 4 labs. So that might bring the number down to about 40 companies in the two buildings. So that number will probably, you know, rotate or be flexible. We did design the building so that the last time you went to a hotel, I know it was probably quite a while ago for most of us. If you went to a hotel and there was an adjoining room to the hotel and there was a doorway between the two rooms, we designed both buildings so that there is that adjoining door, so that if a company takes 2 labs, they don't have to go out into the hallway. They've got that adjoining doorway there. So that's the first part of the question. The second part is we have not had to make any changes regarding the number of tenants or the number of employees in our buildings as a result of COVID. Because we're much, we're 85,000 square feet over 2 buildings. We've got plenty of social distancing space for all the employees of all the companies. We've got a ton of parking for everybody. Where we have had to change on the COVID is we ramped up our cleaning and sanitizing, and we also had to cancel all of the social functions and learning events, the lunch and learns that we would host 1 or 2 a week. And we hope to bring that back in 2021, though, once the vaccine is out.
Mm-hmm. Like this event, which I think went very well online, but had we been at the building, we would have loved it as well. This next question coming in from Krista, and I'm very interested in the answer. Would you do a design build building again?
Yes.
Great. Any particular reason why?
I mean, the process went smooth.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be, there's only 24 hours in the day. And I think it's important to notice, to note that, and to know that you need, there's only so many things you can do. There's so many pieces to the puzzle of these buildings. You need to focus on making sure that you try to, you're never going to get to 100%. But if you can get to 95 to 98%, you can always correct the other 2 or 3% once the building is open.
Okay. This question coming in from Steve Smith. What does ABI stand for?
So ABI stands for Accelerator Bio Incubator. And I think it's important that we are not just for the small company. We've got some fairly large companies here. We've got Wujie, which is a large Chinese company who has a lot of operations in the US. We've got Abcam that's here. They're a big UK company. We've got Sling here that's a spin-off of a large Massachusetts company. So we've got a lot of large companies here, and there's some accounting reasons for that as to why they don't want to sign long-term leases. We do 1-year leases here. And there's also the fact that our philosophy is move in today and start your science tomorrow. If you're organized about your move in, you can do that here.
Okay. This question coming in from Keith DeRosa. Are any of the stations you mentioned clean rooms?
So, this is like asking 5 rabbis a question, you get about 10 different answers. There's really not one definitive definition of what a clean room is. You're going to get a lot of different definitions. We have had a few tenants who have asked us to change the Pascal, which is the air pressure at the doorway, and we've been successful in doing that in a number of different ways. And that sort of builds it up to, I think we got to 22 Pascal, which is, sort of a clean room atmosphere. We don't call it clean rooms though. We don't call it a Bio-Lab Safety 3 or Bio-Lab Safety 4. There are only a handful of BLS 3 and BLS 4 in the entire country. I think there's 1 in Massachusetts, down someplace near the city of Boston, and that's where you get into the really scary stuff. BL1 and BSL2 are fairly safe ways to do science. When you start getting into clean rooms, you start getting into GMP facilities, and we, as I mentioned earlier, we may partner up with someone across the street, a clean room or a GMP facility, which is more in the line of a manufacturing facility for our medications.
Great, and we have one last question, and then unless anyone else has another one to add, I think I'll turn it back over to Trish, but what would you say the future of ABI-LAB 2 is?
The future. Well, we expect 5 to 10 companies to spin off out of ABI-LAB 2 and ABI-LAB 1 and become powerhouses in the life science area in Massachusetts. We hope that they stay in our ecosystem as long as possible, but I know that eventually they will get too big for our space, and they'll end up moving into a 30 or 40 or 50,000 square foot facility. So it'll just be a matter of time.
And I have another question actually that just came in from Bruce Schick. Do you find that the scientists, tenants know that they need in terms of facilities, or do they depend on ABI to guide them through the process?
That's a good question. We definitely have to guide them. Most of the scientists that are coming here are coming out of academia, Harvard, MIT, or they're coming out of Children's Hospital, and they had, sort of everything handed to them on a plate. We definitely have to guide them on helping them decide how to set up the facility, what they need in the facility. Some of them don't know whether they need exhausting of their chemical hoods, so we definitely have to guide them. And so I think that it's important to have, it's important to have some knowledge of that. And since we're all out of questions, I just wanted to talk about three things that I think are really important that everyone should consider, 3 takeaways, if you will, everyone should consider if you're going to go down this road. I think the first thing is you need partnerships. You need to align yourself with some companies already in life sciences. We have partnerships with Thermo Fisher, with Alera Health, with Eppendorf, with McDermott, Will and Emery, who's a big life science attorney, and other companies as well. And I think partnerships are really important to help you, get to success. The other thing I think you need to talk about or think about is sort of the day-to-day operations. Do you want to do what I'm doing, or do you want to go to more of a triple net situation like 33 New York Ave as an example? This is King Street, who is another life science operator does. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's a different model. And I think it's important to understand, what the different models are. And the third thing, and I think it was briefly mentioned earlier, but I think you really have to emphasize it, you really have to build smart. You have to really think about utilities. You have to think about the infrastructure, the generator. You have to think about the pH system. You might want to consider solar. If someone asked me, what mistakes did I make? What were the 2 mistakes I made building ABI-LAB 2? One of them probably would be, I should have done larger elevators, or at least one larger elevator. If any of you have been in a hospital recently, and hopefully you haven't, but if you remember back last time you were, the elevators are very big in hospitals so that they can push the bed in that someone's lying on. We should have gone with one of those larger elevators, and that's because of the size of the equipment that you're moving around. It's not that I can't move around the equipment in the elevators that I have right now. It's just that I should have had one larger one, I guess. The other thing I think people should really consider is solar power. So as I mentioned before, electricity is one of our biggest fixed costs here. And I think we should have petitioned the town of Natick harder to allow us to do things outside of the roof screening that would give us solar power. Across the street at our first building, we do have solar power. And of course, there's some federal programs that pay for part of that solar power. And then there's some SRECs from the state of Massachusetts that help, as well. And then of course, we're creating $20,000 a year of solar power, and that's $20,000 less than we pay in electricity every year. So I think those are the 2 things I would have done differently had I had the opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Whoops.
And I will turn it over to Trish.
Yep. Hi. So I just wanted to say thank you, Joy, to you and everybody on the programs committee. That was a great event that you put together. And Gary, thank you very, very much for your participation and all of your really great information. This was fascinating. And I really, really
Thank
liked the
you.
virtual tour. I hope everyone else really liked it as well. We're going to keep doing more of this stuff, folks. So ideas for other programs, feel free to pass them along to Joy. But we're going to give you a couple of minutes back early. So thank you again, everyone. Enjoy your Wednesday. All right.
Thank you,
at the next
everyone.
one. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.